It's likely you already know that letting your baby watch TV isn't good for them. But what you might not realize is that even having the TV on in the background while your little one plays can negatively impact their development. It might seem like they're not even watching it, but while your little one is playing, the flickering screen and that changing audio constantly pulls their attention away from what they're doing. What we tend to see is children will pick up a toy and start playing with it, then the TV catches their attention and they stop playing, then they go back to the toy and then they get distracted by the TV again. And this cycle keeps repeating. Now the problem isn't just that they're glancing at the screen, it's that they never stay with one toy long enough to really explore it deeply. And that matters because this is how babies build their fine and gross motor skills. They need time to manipulate objects, figure out how things work, and engage with their environment through movement and play. So when their play keeps getting interrupted like this, they're getting less time to practice and develop these foundational skills. But it goes beyond just impacting their motor skill development. It can also impact their language development. You see those little back and forth moments throughout the day where your baby coos and you respond, or they babble and you talk back. That's actually how their language and speech skills develop. But when the TV is on in the background, it disrupts these back and forth interactions. In fact, a study by Dimitri Christakis and colleagues found that parents on average speak around 940 words per hour to their child. But when background TV is on, that drops by about 82%, down to only 170 words per hour. Now think about that. Instead of hearing nearly 1,000 words per hour, the child is hearing less than 200. And research shows a clear connection. Babies who hear more words tend to say their first words earlier, develop larger vocabularies as toddlers, and use more complex sentences as they grow. So when background TV reduces the amount of conversation your baby hears by that much, it can significantly affect their language development. So if you can, just try and save screen time for when your little one is asleep or napping, as those uninterrupted moments of play and conversation are building the foundation for everything that comes next. Now there's something else that can limit those important developmental opportunities, and it has to do with baby containers like a baby bouncer, a baby carrier, a car seat, and a stroller or a pram. Now each of these on their own are great. They are really helpful. But the way you use them is important, and there's one thing that's really important to avoid, and that's what we call container hopping. Basically, container hopping is the practice of moving your baby from one container to another throughout the day. So for example, they might go from their bouncer in the morning to a baby carrier, to a car seat, to a stroller, and then when you get home, you might take them out of the stroller and pop them back into their bouncer again. Now, as I said before, using these occasionally isn't a problem, but it can become one if they're spending large amounts of time throughout the day in them, as it can negatively impact their development. Because whenever your baby is in one of these containers, their movement is restricted. They can't wiggle freely, reach out and grab things, kick their legs, stretch, or move their body in all different directions. And all of these things are how they build strength and learn to control their body. And if they don't get enough time practicing these skills, that's when they can fall behind in their development. And what we see as a result is they're a little late in achieving important milestones like rolling, sitting up, and crawling. Now, the good news here is the fix is simple. All you need to do is make sure that your baby spends a lot more time on the floor than in containers. Of course, use the bouncer when you need to have a shower or the carrier when you're out and about. But the rest of the time, whenever you can, get them on the floor. Place them on their back, their side, or their tummy, and give them as many opportunities as possible to move, explore, and build those skills that they need. Now, container hopping isn't the only thing that you need to be mindful of when it comes to containers. Some of these can actually pose a danger that is much more serious, and this is in relation to your baby falling asleep in them. One of the most common ones is the car seat. Quite often, when you're traveling in the car, your baby will fall asleep in the car seat. Now, when that car seat is buckled into the car correctly, it's designed to sit at an angle that keeps your baby's airways open by preventing their head from falling forward onto their chest. But when you take the car seat out and put it on the floor or snap it into a stroller to let your little one continue sleeping, it's potentially not at that protective angle anymore. And this is where positional asphyxiation becomes a risk. Babies, especially those under 4 months, don't yet have strong enough neck muscles to hold their head up. So when they fall asleep sitting up, their head can actually drop forward onto their chest. And when that happens, it can block their airway, making it difficult for them to breathe normally. This reduced airflow can lead to serious health risks, including suffocation. The safest place for your baby to sleep is always flat on their back on a firm surface. So if your baby does fall asleep in the car seat on the way home, avoid taking the car seat out and letting them to continue to sleep in it. Instead, take them out of the car seat and move them into their crib or bassinet right away. And the same rule applies for swings or bouncers, as any amount of time sleeping in these devices increases the risk of positional asphyxiation. Now let's talk more about your little one's sleep space. Now, something you might be tempted to use are weighted sleep products, things like weighted swaddles, weighted sleep sacks, or weighted blankets, hoping that they'll help your little one sleep better. But the American Academy of Pediatrics strongly recommends that you avoid using these products for children under 12 months of age. And this is because that extra weight can compress their chest, making it difficult for your baby to breathe properly. And if their face gets covered or they roll into a dangerous position, such as face down, they don't have the strength to move the weight off and reposition themselves. And they can also cause your baby to overheat, which increases the risk of SIDS. So if you do have a weighted sleep product, I recommend that you take it out of your baby's crib, as the risk just isn't worth it. And despite everything the marketing promises, there's currently no scientific studies that prove weighted sleep products improve sleep in healthy babies. Now, if sleep is something you are struggling with and you want a little help, I've got a free guide called the New Parent's Guide to Naps, which gives you a breakdown by age when your baby should be napping, how many naps they need, how long they need to be awake between naps, and it covers everything from the newborn sleep patterns all the way through to the toddler years. So if you would like to grab a copy, I've linked that down in the description. Next up is another everyday item that most parents use without realizing that it can actually become dangerous, and that's your baby's pacifier. You see, over time, pacifiers actually break down, and when they do, pieces can break off in your baby's mouth and become a choking hazard. So to make sure that your baby's pacifier is safe, you need to do the pull test either every day or every other day. The way you do this is to just grab the nipple of the pacifier and pull it firmly away from the guard in different directions. Now you want to look for any cracks, tears, or changes in shape or size. And you also want to make sure that there's no signs of it separating from the base, because that whole thing can come off as well. If you do see any of these signs, throw it out immediately, as a piece could detach in your baby's mouth and become a choking hazard. Something else to check is discoloration. If the pacifier is sticky, cloudy, or has changed color, that's also a sign that the material is breaking down and it's time for a new one. The next hazard to watch out for are those hand-me-downs from friends or those great deals you find on secondhand stores or online. Now, these things feel safe because someone else has already used them with their baby, and if it's being passed along or sold, you assume it must be okay. But products get recalled after they've been on the market, and sometimes years after. For example, that Fisher & Price Rock and Play sleeper that worked fine for your friend's baby in 2017, it was actually recalled in 2019 after over 30 infant deaths. Now, unfortunately, recalled products are still in circulation. They're in attics and being sold online by people who have no idea that there's a safety issue. So before you do accept or buy any secondhand baby product, make sure you check that it's actually safe. And you do that by searching the product name and model number of the item on your country's recall database. So here in Australia, that's Product Safety Australia, and in the US, it's the Consumer Product Safety Commission website. Now, I know this is an extra step, but it is worth it, as you'll quickly find out if something has been recalled, and if it has, you can just stop using it right away, or you could look for something else instead. Now, this next hidden danger isn't about the product itself, it's about how you're using it, and it's something you see parents doing everywhere. That is wearing their baby facing outwards. Now, this position after 6 months is generally fine, but before 6 months of age, it can be dangerous for your little one. And this is because your baby's head is heavy, and when they're facing outwards, there is nothing there to support their head, so they have to hold it up all by themselves. But as I mentioned earlier, their neck muscles aren't yet strong enough to hold their head up for long. So they get tired quickly and their head starts to drop forward, pressing their chin against their chest. And as you now know, that chin to chest position can block their airway and make it difficult for them to breathe. Now, the scary part of this is that it can happen without you even noticing. So to minimize the risk of accidental suffocation, it's safer to keep your baby facing inwards for at least the first 6 months of life while they build that head control. And to minimize this risk even further, it's always recommended that you follow the TICS rule for safe baby wearing. So T stands for tight, so the carrier itself should be snug with your baby positioned high, upright, and with proper head support. I stands for in view at all times, so you should be able to see your baby's face just by simply looking down. C stands for close enough to kiss, so your baby should be close enough to your chin that you can easily kiss their head. K stands for keep their chin off their chest, so you want to make sure that you can fit at least one finger between your baby's chin and their chest to ensure that they can breathe freely. And S stands for supported back, so your baby's back should be supported in a natural position with their tummy and chest against you. And I'd also like to add one more, and that is H for healthy hips. Your baby's legs should be in an M shape with their legs spread wide apart and supported up to their knees, and their bottom should be resting just below their knees. This position is really important because during the first 6 months, your baby's hip joints are still forming. Think of it like this: the ball of the hip needs to sit deep in the hip socket so it can develop properly. When your baby's legs are in that M shape, the ball sits where it should and the socket can form around it correctly. But if their legs are hanging straight down, which they sometimes do in carriers, the ball isn't sitting in the socket in the right way, and this puts pressure on the hip joint in places it shouldn't. And if they're in this position often, it can increase the risk of a condition called developmental dysplasia of the hip, or DDH, where the hip joint doesn't actually develop properly. The hip itself then becomes loose or unstable, and in severe cases, it can even dislocate. And if left untreated, this can cause long-term problems with how your little one walks and lead to hip pain or arthritis later in life. So if you can, do try to keep your baby facing inwards until at least 6 months of age, as their safety and hip development will only benefit from it. Now, the next hazard is obvious in that it's choking, but what you might not realize is that the most common cause for choking in babies and children under 4 isn't small toys or those random objects they find on the floor. It's food. And some of the biggest culprits are foods that you'd never expect. In this video, you'll find out exactly which foods are the biggest choking hazards for little ones and why they're so dangerous, and exactly how to prepare them safely based on your child's age. So if you are about to start solids or you're already feeding your baby, make sure you watch that video next.